Welcome to MTG Friends. Let's do a commander deck tech on Animar Soul of Elements. This one caught my eye a few weeks ago, mainly because I thought it'd be really cool to create a Elements tribal type theme going on. It kind of evolved from there. I'll show you what I mean. So there's a couple different ways you can take this commander. I will mention some of them, and the synergies we did was mostly tribal for elements, and there's a lot of elements out there. So let's take a look at the packages. Oh yeah, here we'll make this a little smaller so we can look at the packages. So the Animar Soul of Elements, protection from white and from black, which is kind of funny. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a 1/1 counter on Animar Soul of Elements. Creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each 1/1 counter on Animar. So you figure he's going to get spot removed at least a couple of times. So hopefully we can get at least a few counters on there. Now, in terms of packages, let's look through what we have, and then I'll explain the other routes you could go. We got the land package, obviously. We got ramp, just one counter spell. I'll talk about that later, why we're only running one. A huge amount of draw. We are doing a landfall package in here because I just think that the landfall synergies with this kind of a build is just fabuloso. Couple shenanigan pieces, I'll explain those. A good amount of element tribal shenanigans going on. Couple just staples for protection. Couple tutors that you would expect. You know, in terms of like staples that are in these decks, you're gonna see similar cards just over and over and over again. You know, like the tutors, mystical tutor, worldly tutor. But you can easily swap those out if you want to get something more creative and something different going on. Cyclonic Rift, for example. I mean, you're just going to see this in my play groups like almost always. But that doesn't mean you have to run Cyclonic Rift. But it is such a powerful card that why not run it if you're in blue? Okay, I do digress. So we are going for mostly a tribal theme here with big creatures that become less expensive because of our Animar synergies and the +1 counters making things cost less. We're also not running many mana dorks because we're running the landfall package. Now, we are not running the doubling season effects in this. You could easily like remove the whole landfall package in this particular build and swap it in for like doubling season effects, where you're doing a lot of +1/+1 counters, running Vornklex, all that kind of stuff. So those are probably the two coolest, most awesomeness maximus ways. I was losing my ability to speak there for this particular commander. So let's jump in to the actual build we have and go for it, yo. All right, I'm gonna make this big again. Bigger. Let's make it bigger. All right, here we go. So now, how's that look? Does that look all right? Yes. Okay, so Animar, we've already explained what it does. I think it's really funny that it's got protection from white and from black. That's just so random and strange. Okay, we're just running one counterspell, which is counterspell. You could easily swap this out if you just don't want to run any. You could also, if you're looking for more of a control the board, you could remove, say, some of the ramp and some of the landfall and put in a few more counterspell spells. All right, what do we got going on here? You know what? I can't see the package. Draw package. There. I think I like that better. Not so like in your face. And we got Ancient Silver Dragon. It's got flying. Whenever Ancient Silver Dragon deals combat damage to a player, roll a d20. Draw cards equal to the result. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. There are a handful of cards in this build that having no maximum hand size is fabuloso. So we have a few cards in here, including the land, Reliquary Tower, and a couple others that make it so that it doesn't matter how many cards we have in our hand. Yes, sirree, Bob. And for some of these bigger creatures, if there's something that's not in here that you really want to drop in here in our commander's colors, by all means. By all means. All right, Consecrated Sphinx is next. So the first two creatures off the rip aren't elementals. Yes, okay. But most are tribal. Consecrated Sphinx, we are in draw still. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. And since we have no hand size, most likely this is going to be super bueno beneficial. Growth Spiral is a great one that you play on the end step of your opponent. Draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Landfall. Herald's Horn, because we are mostly running elementals. Herald's Horn enters the battlefield, say elementals. Creatures you cast cost 1 less, colorless. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card of the chosen type, you may reveal it and put it into your hand. So you're probably going to be hitting that at least half the time, if not hopefully 3/4 of the time. Kindred Discovery, another tribal, great for any tribe you're running. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. Mole Drifter for draw. Whenever Mole Drifter enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards. It's got the Evoke, which for people who weren't playing back when Evoke came, you may cast a spell for its Evoke cost. If you do, it's sacrificed when it enters the battlefield. So if you just really need to get that draw, you don't necessarily care about that 2/2 body that's flying, then that'll work out. Mystic Remora is fabulous, especially early game. It does have a cumulative upkeep of 1 each time, so 1, then 2, then 3, etc., etc., etc. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you can draw a card. Notice it says may, so if you're getting milled, you can choose whether to do it. That player may pay 4 to counter this effect. You are almost always going to be drawing a card off of Mystic Remora, especially early game. Rhystic Study, the card that everyone loves to hate and everyone loves to play. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. You are going to get a lot of cards from Rhystic Study. It's just going to happen. Risen Reef. So, tribal. Whenever Risen Reef or another elemental enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield tapped. If you don't put the card onto the battlefield, put it into your hand. So because we have that landfall package, we're getting a lot of synergy from the elemental package and the landfall package. Sylvan Library, it's just a staple for me and most people that are running green. At the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. Does cost you 8 life to do that if you grab all 3. That is probably the simplest way to explain Sylvan Library. Thrasios. So this one is great. It's not an elemental. It's cost you 2. For 4, you can scry 1, then reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it on the battlefield tapped. Landfall. Otherwise, draw a card. We don't care about the partner part of this. All right, and then we got Vanquisher's Banner, tribal. Whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. And we don't really care about the all creatures of the chosen type get a +1/+1. This card is totally swappable because we're not going wide with a bunch of tiny creatures that the +1/+1 mechanic is awesome. It does cost 5 as well. So if you're not feeling it and you think that the draw mechanics that you already have in here are good enough, then by all means swap out Vanquisher's Banner. I tend to be in play groups where there is a lot of removal of artifact and enchantments and board wipes and exiling. So having just yet another way to draw is a good thing. All right, we are in the Elementals package. Ancient Green Warden for 6. And a lot of these creatures are going to be rather expensive on the mana side. Reach, you may play lands from your graveyard. If a land enters the battlefield, causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger. That ability triggers an additional time. That's going to be super awesome with creatures like Morog, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Ashaya, Soul of the Wilds for 5. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of lands you control, so it's going to become Gigantosaurus Rex. Non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types. This one is tricky. If you are worried about board wipes, this is going to beat the crap out of you because your forests will be creatures as well. However, if the board wipe says non-land, then your land is okay because it's a land in addition to its other types. You got it? You got it? What? All right. Avatar of Growth. Also a 6-drop. Costs 1 less to cast for each opponent you have. So assuming you're playing against 3 other people, you get it. You get what's up with this. What's up? Whenever Avatar of Growth enters the battlefield, each player searches their library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them on the battlefield, then shuffle the library. Yeah, it benefits your opponents, but it is most likely benefiting you way more. I thought it was fun because they're all elementals to play all of the Cavaliers because I really enjoy the Cavaliers, especially Thorns. So Cavalier of Flame for 2 creatures you control get +1 and gain haste until end of turn. That can be super great. Whenever ETBs, discard any number of cards, then draw that many cards. And if that wasn't enough crap going on, when it dies, it deals X damage to each opponent and each planeswalker they control, where X is the number of land cards in your graveyard. That last part really isn't going to affect you all that much. Cavalier of Gales in the blue, flying. Now, the fact that these have 3 pips in these colors could be problematic early game, possibly mid game, depending on how your land drops are. But we have enough duels and triomes and all that shenanigans and shock lands that it shouldn't be a factor at all. Flying, love that this is a elemental that flies. Whenever Cavalier of Gales enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Sift through some stuff. Whenever Cav dies, shuffle it into its owner's library, then scry 2. Scrying can be super powerful, especially late game. Cav of Thorns. This is my favorite Cavalier. It's got reach. It's a 5/6 body. That stuff's all great. When it ETBs, reveal top 5 cards of your library. Put a land card from among them on the battlefield and the rest in the graveyard. When it dies, you can exile it. If you do, put another target card from graveyard on top of your library. So there's just a lot going on with Cav of Thorns. I really like this one specifically. Now, the red one was sort of on the fence, but it made the cut because, of course, it is an elemental. And now for Endurance, Elemental Incarnation. It's got flash and reach. Whenever Endurance enters the battlefield, up to 1 target player puts all the cards from the graveyard on the bottom of their library in a random order. So this actually has double duty. If you're getting milled to death, you can actually put your stuff back in your library. What? Which is probably going to be very rare that you do that. And it's got Evoke. Exile a green card from your hand. All right, Fury. We got the other Elemental Incarnation for 5. Double strike. When Fury enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers. It's got Evoke. Exile a red card from your hand to play it. What? In a pinch. Plus, it's got elemental synergies. If we weren't dealing with elemental synergies, then Endurance and Fury would definitely not make the cut. But they are elementals. They were strong enough to make it. Gaia's Revenge for 7. Can't be countered. It's got haste. Can't be the target of non-green spells or abilities from non-green sources. And most likely it's going to cost less to cast because of our commander. Yes, sir. Liege of the Tangle. If it wasn't an elemental, I don't think it would make the cut. But it is an elemental, and I think it's funny because it's an 8/8. What? It's an 8/8? Ridiculous. Whenever Liege of the Tangle deals combat damage to a player, you may choose any number of target lands you control and put an awakening counter on each of them. Each of those lands is an 8/8 green elemental creature for as long as it has an awakening counter on it. They're still lands. So, do I have anything to say about mass removal for this? No. Just be careful. Be careful when you turn lands into creatures. That's all I'm saying, yo. Just read the board. Read the board, yo. Maelstrom Wanderer in our colors. It's super expensive for mana drop. Creatures you control have haste. Cascade, Cascade. Oh, yeah. Do I need to explain Cascade? If you don't know what Cascade is, put it in the comments. I'll tell you. All right. So this thing is super duper if it drops and hits the playfield. All right, I'm going to explain Cascade. Whenever you cast this spell, you exile from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less than 5, 6, 7, 8. And so then you get to put that onto the battlefield. And then you get to do it again because it's Cascade, Cascade. All right. I said I wasn't going to explain it, but I explained it anyways. So you probably all know that anyways, and so I'm just drolling on and drooling, talking about the Wanderer. What is wrong with me today? Nesting Dragon for 5. We are not in landfall, but this one has landfall. It was more important that it was, elemental, landfall. What the hell's happening here? What is going on? No, you are in the wrong category, sir. You are in the wrong category. No. We say no to that. All right, let's find out where the hell we are in this list of shenanigans. Oh, we are in the blue elemental incarnation. Flash, flying. Flash is so great. I love Flash. Whenever subtly enters the battlefield, choose up to one target creature spell or planeswalker spell. Its owner puts it on the top or bottom of their library. And you can evoke it for blue. You're probably not going to evoke any of these well, who knows? You just never know. Read the board, man. Read the board. Also a decent card, but really makes the cut because we're doing elemental shenanigans. Thornling, also an elemental. I forgot this thing was an elemental. It's a 4/4/5 drop. You can put green into it to give it haste, trample, indestructible. And you can put colors into it to give it pump it up. Pump, either in the butt or the power, yo. Titan of Industry. This is an interesting one and really crazy. It's an elemental. Reach, trample, and then when it ETBs, you can make it do 2 things. You can destroy an artifact or enchantment. You can gain 5 life. You can create a rhino that's a 4/4 or put a shield counter. Shield counter just means the first time it takes damage, the shield counter breaks and it doesn't kill the creature. Pretty cool. It is pretty expensive, but you know what? That's why we're dropping it like it's hot. Because of our synergies with our commander. Undergrowth Champion for 3. It's a 2/2, which is pretty wussy, but it is, yes, you guessed it, elemental, because it's in the elemental category. If it takes damage, while it has a 1/1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove a 1/1 counter from Undergrowth Champion. Landfall, yay! We have more of a landfall, of course. Whenever land enters, you put a 1/1 on it. So this thing can and most likely will get really, really big. All right, Vengevine for 4. There's some cool modern combos with this sucker. But alas, we're talking about Commander. It's got haste. Whenever you cast a spell, if it's the second creature spell you cast this turn, you may return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. Yes, sirree. Looks like we're into land next. All right, I'm going to really blast through this and only highlight the really important stuff. So we're going for dual lands, shock lands, fetch lands in our colors, and then the pathways in our colors as well. So pathway, shock land, pathway, a few basics of all of ours. The pain lands, the triome in our colors. Me loveth some triomes. The fetch lands, you get it. Oh, and then I love running you have 2 or more opponents. If you tend to do 1v1 or against 2 people, just remove these ones. We are running Reliquary Tower because there's a good chance we're going to have more than 7 cards in our hand at the end step. We are also running Seagate Restoration because it has the land on one side that costs us bolt damage, or we can draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand plus 1, and you have no max hand size for the rest of the game. I love these no max hand size for the rest of the game without it having to be a spell that's on the battlefield. That is just super bueno. All right, we're running the red iteration of this, where on the flip side is the bolt for red, and then we can do the X damage divided as you choose among 2 target creatures and or planeswalkers. If X is 6 or more, it deals twice X. Your brain hopefully reconciled what I just said. If that's confusing, we can talk about it. Pain land, people, shock, blah, 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 blah. All right, I think, and then this is the third iteration, the Zendikar land. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield if they're blah, 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 blah. If it's 3 or less, put 3 1/1 counters on it. Again, we're not doing the doubling season shenanigans. The flip side of this is the bolt. You could probably, out of all 3 of these, swap this one out for a basic or whatever else. Valakut Awakening, put any number of cards from your hand onto the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards plus 1. And then the flip side of that, I can't remember if that one comes in tapped or not. Let's look, because I don't remember. Valakut enters the battlefield. That's a tap land. So actually, this one could easily be swapped out as well. But I like the fact that this other side is instant speed. And you know, if you've watched any of my other episodes, I absolutely loathe comes in tapped lands. Here. Comes in tapped lands. I'm pointing at it at the screen, but you know what's up. Yeah. What is happening here? What technical difficulties? Let's see. We were in lands. Where'd the lands go? We're doing it live, man. Oh, and we're running more than the normal amount of lands. We're actually running 36 because of all of the landfall stuff. The fact that we're going to be drawing a shizzle ton. All right, so up to the next category, which is landfall. Landfall, peoples. And of course, if you're new to the channel and you've made it this far, I applaud you and thank you for listening to me drum on. Subscribe. I'm not sure why that helps me. I don't think I care at this point. I'm just doing this for the funsies. Well, I'm out of control today. Drink my tea. So, do you guys think I drink tea in the mornings or in the evenings? When am I recording this? I don't know. Trick's on you, man. I drink all day. I drink tea all the time. So that's how I roll, yo. That's how I roll. I mean, who isn't going to play Avenger of Zendikar in an elemental commander deck and a landfall deck? I mean, hell's bells, of course we're going to run Avenger. Avenger, pretty straightforward. You get that many plants for however many lands you have, and then every time you drop a land onto the battlefield, you get +1/+1 counters on all those goddamn plants. Holy shit, Sue, man. All right, Morag. The must-to, go-to landfall card if you're in red. Holy shit, Sues. This is a fabulous, ridiculous card. Each creature you control gets +1 for each time it has attacked this turn. Whoa, man. So landfall really makes this thing out of control. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat phase after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. Oh, man, you can be attacking till the cows come home, depending on how many lands you drop, man. That's redonky-donk. Shall I say anything more about this card? No? Okay. Multani, Yavi Maya's avatar. I don't know why I said it in a racist Indian accent. Because I'm an idiot, I guess. Reach, trample, Multani, Yavi Maya avatar gets +1 for each land you control and each land card in your graveyard. You could easily lose track of lands in your graveyard because we're not running sack land crapola. Although, as I say that, for 2, return 2 lands you control to their owner's hand. Return Multani from your graveyard to the hand. I don't know what the hell I was talking about. I believe there is a card in here that sacks land if you want. We'll find it. We'll find it, yo. Nesting Dragon. I love this for multiple reasons. In some of our other episodes, especially Dragon Tribal, you'll always see Nesting Dragon because whenever a land hits, you get an O2 Red Dragon egg. So if there's a board wipe, assuming it's not a mass removal, exile removal like Farewell, you then get a bunch of 2/2 red dragons for your eggs, which is pretty fabulous. And don't think for a second that we're not running Omnaths in this elemental build. Hell yeah, we are. Omnath, Locust of Rage, Rageful Landfall. When a land hits the, I almost said bounces, hits the play field, you get a 5/5 red and green elemental creature token. By the way, I do not like bounce lands, even though with the landfall thing, so you will see no bounce lands here where, you know, you drop it and then you got to bring it, blah, 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 blah. I don't like those lands. Never have liked those lands. Whenever Omnath, Locust of Rage, or another elemental you control dies, Omnath deals 3 damage to target creature or player. With that said, if you like bounce lands, well, hell, then you're going to be running them. No judgment here, yo. Omnath, Locust of the Royal. When ETBs deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals you control, which hopefully, if there aren't too many board wipes, you have a bunch of them. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on target elemental you control. If you control 8 or more lands, draw a card. Since this is landfall and lots of land hitting the battlefield, that will probably happen. Oran Reef Hydra, it's got landfall. Doubling Season would, I guess, really be awesome right here. So if you absolutely want to tweak this and get some Doubling Season effects in here, I mean, go for it, man. Go for it, man. Or woman. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Oran Reef Hydra. If that land is a forest, put 2 1/1 counters. It is probably going to be forest 1/4 of the time, so that last half isn't super exciting, but you know, it's still gonna trigger. Phylath, World Sculptor. If it wasn't an elemental and it didn't have landfall, which it does, then this would not be a playable card. But it does have both of those things, so it is absolutely playable, even though it's 6, because of our synergies with our commander. When it ETBs, create 1 green plant creature token for each basic land you control. And landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put 4 1/1 counters on target plant you control. If Avenger is out and you have Phylath as well, pretty good. There aren't a ton of basics, but there's enough. Enough where this is definitely going to create you some plants, yo. Rampaging Baloth. I mean, if you're doing landfall, you definitely want this. There's no reason not to have this. Trample landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you may create a 4/4 green beast creature token. I don't know why you would choose not to, but it does have the may. So there you go. All right, a little bit more landfall. Retreat to Coral Helm for 3. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. You can tap or untap a target creature or scry. Scrying is actually pretty damn useful. This is also a pretty damn swappable card. Royal Elemental. It's an elemental, folks. It does have 3 blue in the pip, so I don't like that, especially the fact that we're in 3 colors. But you know what? We're going for it, man, because it's got landfall and it's an elemental. Whenever land enters the battlefield under control, you may gain control of target creature as long as you control Royal Elemental. That is so stupid. So stupidly awesome. So if you can keep Royal Elemental alive and you can just keep stealing people's stuff, hell yeah. Oh, Scoot Swarm is so horrifying. Landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 insect. And if you have, 6 or more? Yeah, 6 or more lands, you create a Scoot Swarm. So suddenly there's a billion Scoot Swarms out there. You will have a huge target on your back with this one. Hell yeah. Well, maybe not target on your back, but the battlefield is definitely going to get wiped. I do digress. Seer Sundial, totally garbage card if you weren't in landfall, obviously. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. And the reason I like this card, speaking with my hands, is because we're dropping so many lands onto the battlefield, there's real good chance we're going to have a spare 2 to go ahead and do that. Got it? You got it. All right. So this one's an interesting one. I swapped this in because I'm starting to play this more and more often in Commander. Ava Brook Caretaker, surprisingly potent card. It's not expensive. It's less than $1. It's got hexproof itself, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 1/1 counters on another target creature you control. And then what's funny, and even though it sucks to have to keep track of daybound and nightbound, it's got other permanents you control have hexproof on the nightbound. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 1/1 counters on each creature you control. Each! That's bananas, man! And I know I keep saying that this isn't a doubling season deck, but there's a couple cards in here where having doubling season in here would be good. But no, it's typical of what I would do in green is putting doubling season crap in here. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what we'd replace. Yes, I do. But anyways, Heroic Intervention, you're going to see this in probably every green deck I have because it's a staple. It's a staple, man. Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible in the turn. All right, Rampalicious. Birds. Cultivate. So we're going to have things in here that do the landfall mechanics. Mostly. We don't have the mana dorks, the elves, and all that shizzle. Kodama of the East Tree. Just keep in mind, whenever another permanent enters the battlefield, including a land, if it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser converted mana cost from your hand onto the battlefield. So even if it wasn't a land, that just means, if that seems confusing to you, that means if you drop a land, as long as the next land you play isn't triggered by that ability, it just means you can only put 2 lands. That's mainly what it means. Or like a creature, and the creature entering doesn't trigger another creature entering. You know what I'm saying? Like the trigger. I'm not even gonna edit this out. So in simple terms, this triggers. You drop a creature, right? So the trigger doesn't cause another trigger. Clear as mud? Shit. If that's confusing as all get up, I'll write it in the comments if you go, what the hell are you talking about, dude? What? You are no English speaking well person. Kodama's Reach. This is a pretty weak card. I'm not a huge fan of Kodama's Reach, but you know what? Whatever. We're in landfall. Screw it. Search the library for up to 2 basic land cards. Reveal those cards. Put one on the battlefield tab and the other one in your hand. Yeah. Lotus. It's got landfall. Whenever land enters battlefield under your control, add 1 mana of any color. This one's super bueno. Early game. Kind of weak later, but you know what? It's all good, and it's got landfall. Nyx Bloom Ancient. It is an elemental. It does have 3 green pips. If you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana in Steadily Deadly. Old Knobbone. All right, so we're into some non-elementals as we have earlier in the episode. Those non-elementals, you could easily swap them out if there was other like common elementals you wanted to put in here or whatever. I mean, I don't think we're running any commons that are elementals. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 uncommons. Not that matters. But Old Knobbone, whenever any of your creatures smacks a face, you get that many treasure tokens. This is just a ridiculous card that is so powerful. And as long as you're running something that doesn't care about the fact that this costs 7 mana to cost, then you should run Old Knobbone. Omnath Locusts of Mana. Elemental. Green mana doesn't empty from your mana pool as steps and phases end. And it gets +1/+1 for each green mana in your mana pool. This is way more awesome in mono green, but it is an elemental, and you will be able to utilize that because there is green mana you can dump into it. Parcel Beast, it's an elemental. Oh, one of the uncommons that I was talking about. It's got mutate for 2, green, blue, and for 1 tap, look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may put it onto the battlefield. If you don't put that card on the battlefield, put it in your hand. This one is in here specifically because we are dealing with elementals and landfall. Sky Shroud, one of my favorite ramp spells. For 4, you get 2 forests that are untapped, and that does include like Triome, and that includes Shockland. So this is a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous card. Tangled Floral Hedron, one of the very few mana dorks because it's an elemental. 3 visits, go grab a forest card, put it on the battlefield, untapped. Cyclonic Rift. Let's talk about Cyclonic Rift for a second. Yes, we all know overload, all the things balanced that are your opponents. This card, you could totally swap this out. It's not necessary in this build. It's just a super powerful removal spell that does win games. But by all means, if you don't have it, or you don't want to play it, or your opponents bitch at you if you're running Cyclonic Rift because of your play groups, easily swapped out. You could easily swap Cyclonic Rift out for like another counter spell, or like Blasphemous Act since we're in red, or Blasphemous Act. Probably if you're not going to run Cyclonic Rift because you get bitched at for running it, run Blasphemous Act. Although we're designed to try to get lots of elementals out on the board. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. All right, so I shoehorned. Here's the horn and here's the shoe. I shoehorned Blightsteel Colossus because I just don't put them in decks very often because it costs 12, which is just so much. But because of our commander and the hope that we can get our commander out with some 1/1 counters on it, that means in theory, Blightsteel could cost a whole lot less to cast. And if we get this ridiculous thing out on the board for like say 8 or something, and we have landfall and we have ramp, like a lot of ramp, do I really need to tell you why we're running Blightsteel Colossus? We're running it because it's an awesome card. I think it's hilarious. I love the artwork. In fact, it's my home screen on my phone. See, home screen on my phone. Yeah, I didn't give like any personal information by doing that. No, I didn't think so. Except that I have an iPhone for all you non-iPhone people, iPhone haters. If Blightsteel Colossus would be put into a graveyard for me, reveal Blightsteel Colossus and shuffle it into its owner's library instead. It's an 11/11 trample, infect, indestructible. Need I say more? You win games with this frickin' thing. You just win. Speaking of winning games with this frickin' thing. Oh, and this is the shenanigans category because I just couldn't put it in any other category. I mean, Craterhoof. What do I say about Craterhoof? I mean, you could easily not run this card, which is why in this particular build I put it in shenanigans. You could swap this card out. It tends to win games. It's ridiculous. In a way, I'm being a little lazy by putting in Craterhoof because like there's probably some other card that makes more sense for this build. But hell with it. Why not? When Craterhoof behemoth into the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So if you've gone wide with a bunch of elementals, then you're groovy. I don't know why I'm scratching my head so much in this episode. So swap this card out if you don't have it, or if you feel like running a couple extra mana dorks or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I like it. I run it. It tends to end up in my green stuff. It does have 3 green pips, but you know what? Our mana base is such that these 3 green pip creatures shouldn't cause us too much grief, especially with the draw we have going on and the shenanigans. And yes, I know. I've said it like 4 times. We're not running Doubling Season. We're running Doubling Season in a creature. Vorinclex, Monstrous Rider, Trample, Haste. If you would put a counter on a permanent, put twice that many. If an opponent, you put half that many. I love the second half of that more than the first. Ren and 7. I very rarely put Planeswalkers in, especially multiple ones. But in this particular build, we're running Ren because of the landfall and the land stuff. +1, reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all land cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest in your graveyard. That synergizes super duper well with landfall. And for 0, put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Also super great for this kind of a build. And -3, you can create a tree folk if you need a blocker based on the size of your land package. Land package. I said land package. And it's ultimate, which I don't think I've ever done. Return all permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. I mean, if you pull that off, you're probably well on your way to winning anyways. Mystical Tutor to go fetch up an instant or sorcery. You put it on top of your little library at instant speed. Worldly Tutor, same thing for a creature at instant speed. All right, and that gets us through Animar Soul of Elements. I do love Elements. I think I like Zombies the most just because old school and whatever. I think it's super hilarious that it has protection from white and from black. Like, that's totally not necessary to have an elemental that has protection from white and from black. I just like, okay, all right. The fact that it gets +1/+1 counters, making our creatures cost 1 colorless to cast. Just don't forget that part. It's the 1 colorless part. I just think this is a super fun commander. I think you're going to have a shazizzle ton of fun. I could keep rolling on and just gleaning philosophical about how awesome Magic is and how awesome Commander is and how much I appreciate you guys being part of the channel and drink my tea. But I think I'll just end the episode and say thanks for watching, thanks for liking, thanks for being part of our little fun island of broken misfit toys. All right, peace out.